can you stop squeaking, please?
Sorry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Old World Behemoths podcast. My name is Alasdair. I'm a behemoth because I took a 520-point dragon to a 1,500-point tournament. With me, I have Alex, Chris, and special guest Geoff, who we'll get to in just a second. Alex, you're a behemoth. Why?
Because I took a 460-point fat man to a tournament yesterday and managed to win.
Oh. Well, the number one player in Australia, Demons, is that the route that we've got to go through?
That's not actually true.
Oh,
maybe
whoa,
Legacy
okay.
Demons.
Okay, Legacy Demons.
Sorry, what's it called?
Renegades.
Renegade Pack.
Renegades. Okay, first in the world, ladies and gentlemen. Chris, you're a behemoth. Why?
Mainly because I play ogres. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And Geoff, I'm going to call you an honorary behemoth because you're the only person I've seen who's brought 2 Iron Demons to an event, and
yes.
That feels pretty behemoth to me, despite the fact that they're a chariot. So
that was exactly what I was going to say anyway.
Yeah, fabulous. Glad we're on the same page. So today this evening we've got a hopefully shorter episode for you. Tom is, of course, away today. He's in mid-exam season, so he won't be joining us. But we've brought Geoff along because we'd like to talk a little bit about 3D printing, and we'll tell you why Geoff is the resident expert on that in just a second. But we've also got to talk about the leaks for the Beastmen Arcane journal, leaks that we maybe got ahead of the curve of a little while ago. But that's neither here nor there. And then we've got a very special topic, one that is close to my heart and close to what we talked about in the previous episode for more than an hour. Our first event as the Old World Behemoths reunited from the last time that we were running events 10 years ago.
So, of course, something else back then.
But we certainly were. We were also a lot slimmer. So let's carry on into first of all thanking our Patreons. I should say thank you, Death1942, Ghost Joshua Sick, Silver Dave, Geoff, who may or may not be on this call, and Gomo.
Gomo, who's newest Patreon.
Gomo, oh
Shout
yes.
out.
That is very true. Thank you, Gomo. You help us keep the lights on. You help us keep producing these wonderful discussions with you via Riverside. And if you'd like to become a patron, you'll be able to find the link in the show notes or description of this video. So, and thank you. Of course, we put them at the front. We have to acknowledge them. 25 Creative for your continued work in keeping us beautiful.
Emphasis on continued.
Continued, very much, with much patience. So I think we move on to Geoff. Welcome, Geoff. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Very exciting.
Now I'm gonna shuffle over to Alex because you, Alex, Chris, you all share something that I don't. And that is access to a 3D printer. So I am totally superfluous in this discussion, and I'm just gonna throw to Alex.
Well, yeah, we should have, before we introduce Geoff officially. I blame him for sucking me into, the FDM filament side of the hobby, of which I'm most grateful for taking some advice on, but also didn't quite realize how much a hobby within a hobby it is. But Geoff, thanks for coming on, mate. This is a very probably wide topic that people sometimes don't get straight answers on when it comes to how to get into 3D printing, the pros, the cons. Should they even get into 3D printing, I think is actually a big question for a lot of people, right? Sometimes it's not the right economic choice, and why services such as those run by Pandem Wargaming might be a better choice for them. So as a bit of a preface before we launch into the topic, why don't you give us a rundown on the background of you getting into 3D printing and how you turned it into a business?
Okay, sure, yeah. So I do run a 3D printing business called Pandem Wargaming. it is mostly focused on terrain and gaming aids. So that's all of your basing and then, measuring sticks, things of that nature. I started printing just after my wedding last year. I'd been wanting to do it much before then, but we were in hard saving mode for the wedding, so I was not allowed. It was, I think, 3 days after the wedding when I bought my my P1S.
It makes the printer look cheap. It makes the printer look cheap.
Yeah, it was kind of after I'd counted how much we got in gifts and realized that okay, yeah, I can afford one now, so went and bought
Very
it.
nice.
But yes, and so then as you were saying, yeah, so I started printing on FDM, I wanted to do it for my armies mostly, and also just to get myself some terrain for my tables, but started printing miniatures on a FDM printer and realized this is a terrible idea. And so went and bought a resin printer 2 weeks later. So now I do both. So yeah, I've been getting into both. Yes, you're right. It is a bit of a hobby of its own. I was having a really fun time this morning trying to fix one of my printers. But it's, I don't know, I just love doing it, to be honest. Every time
So how
I
many
pull
do you
something
have
off a
now?
bed. I've got 2 FDM and 1 resin at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll go into, for
up.
those who don't understand the acronyms,
Yes.
we do have a little slide to explain it.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so the store opened up, a month ago now, basically? Almost. So come on down and get yourself some terrain.
Yep. Local to Australia, important.
Yes.
Support local if you can. Most of the time, if you go onto eBay, Etsy, etc., it's coming from America or the UK. So how do people actually, is it direct from the website itself, Geoff, or are you hosted on any of the other websites?
Direct from my website. For most of my stuff, I have some basing things on Etsy just because it was already there. So you can jump on there and grab them, but the exact same price.
Yep.
Not anything that's not on your website. If someone has the files, can they email you and organize that?
Happy to print for people. There is licensing issues around that, so it will depend on if I can get the license for that file or if I have the license. So yes, happy to do it, but there is some
commercial licensing constraints. But if you want something quick and need it now, go onto the website. So
definitely.
And if you're in Sydney and you attend Oldhammer, you'll see Geoff there, often arriving with bags of supplies to deliver
for everyone
to people there.
Yeah,
movement trays, as you say, and the like.
Yeah, so I am quite active in the old world and AOS communities. So if you do want to pick up, you can pick up in Lincoln, or I'll drop them off at.
On the next slide, you'll see a good example of that.
Oh yes, this was terrain for ShireCon, wasn't it?
Yes,
that you provided.
ShireCon AOS tournament. I was running it with a friend. So these are all prints that are available on the store, all painted by him, because I am not that great at painting. Gotta be honest. And that's the one on the left is the actual how it comes out.
Yeah, I was going to say, Geoff, the quality is a lot, and Alison may not be able to spot it, but and actually, Chris, you don't have an FDM printer. We should probably preface that. Chris, you have a resin.
Yeah, but I have purchased a table's worth of FDM terrain before, so I've dealt with it.
Yeah, and I would say part of the reason why I got into 3D printing was not just because of costs and things like that, which we can go into, but quality control is a critical factor that people miss out on. And why I think it's important to order local is because you have that ability to consult the person that's printing X product for you on what quality you would like. So it's not really arranging scale. In my view, it should just be top quality if you're getting it. On the left, you can see here that is a top quality print. You can hardly see the layer lines of the FDM printer, which is not an easy thing to achieve out of the box.
Yeah.
So you're not just paying for the product, you're paying for the skill of the printer as well. And as somebody that also owns an FDM printer, this is better than I can do, Geoff. By far.
Yeah. Well, it's I do spring for the more expensive PLA. It's the PLA matte, which does.
We all know that.
Yeah.
Actually, my FDM got recommended by someone on the school.
As a recipient of some of the models that have come out of Alex's early days.
That's
of
the
prints.
resin. Yeah.
No, I know that's the resin, but as the recipient, yeah, it's the learning process for sure. But
you get the cheap and nasty, mate. You get the cheap and nasty.
As is present in my armies on the board. No, as far as a layperson with no experience, I mean, it is a stark difference between some of the stuff that I've certainly seen, even the stuff that I've considered ordering, to be quite honest, and sort of what it appears that you've been able to put together. I just had a quick question about something that very quickly occurred to me about the image on the right. Those little discs down on the board, were those part of the prints that you did as well?
No, those are objective markers.
Those are
they're just
PVA, PVC, whatever it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, never mind. I thought we were going to have a further discussion later on, but that's fine.
I can print objective markers. I have the files for it. So
then maybe we do have a conversation to go on. We will return to that later. But shall we have? I mean, it is beautiful to look at. Quite frankly, the terrain, the seamlessness of it. It's always been a frustrating thing to me getting plastic template molds and having to shave, the mold lines off and get rid of them. And one of the beautiful things that 3D printing offers, apart from some drawbacks, because it obviously does have some limitations, particularly on the resin side. It is just beautiful to have that piece of terrain looking very organic and very natural. And I definitely encourage people to go and check out your store.
One really important part of that is it should be one piece for the most part. So you've printed
as much as I can.
Obviously. Like it's one piece, so it's going to be strong.
Yeah.
I think some people are worried because they sometimes pick up these pieces, particularly the filament ones, and they feel how light it is, and they're like, "Oh, that's going to break." Honestly, they're very, very strong.
Sturdy.
They're very resilient. Part of that is because it's usually printed as one piece. So
yeah.
Now, I think that's a really nice segue into let's talk about what the difference is. We've mentioned both resin printers and filament printers, and the reasoning. What they might already be used for. But I think this would be a really good opportunity to talk about the differences. Geoff, would you mind giving us the high-level view? What is the difference between a resin and a filament printer, and what are they for?
So the resin printer uses liquid resin. It's toxic, but very, very, very mildly. But you do need to gear up when you're using it. Anyway. We won't get into that.
We advise to use protection.
Yes, definitely always use protection, especially as it does require 100% alcohol for cleaning as well. But so your resin printer is used for doing a lot of prints at once. So the way that it works is that you have a tray with a UV light beneath, and as the tray dips into the resin, and then lights turn on in the shape that it needs to be for the model. That makes the resin go hard, and it pulls up, and it does it layer by layer by layer. So it means that if you're doing to print one model, takes the same time as it takes to print 20 models. So for printing an army, for printing miniatures, it's the better way to go. Its quality is probably the same, or it's better, but it's not a big difference. It's just the time. Because if you want to do like a really high quality filament print for a model, it's going to be at the smallest settings, and it's going to take 20 hours for one model. The resin printer will do it in an hour and a half. That was when I was printing dwarves, little tiny dwarves. So yes, high setup costs. The printer itself is probably cheaper than the other one. but you do then need a washer because when you finish a resin print, there's obviously heaps of resin left on it. So you have to wash it in alcohol. Then you have to cure it as well. You can use the sun, takes a couple of days, or you can use a curer, takes 5 minutes.
Use a curer.
Yeah. And then also you need all the PV, what the hell is it? PVE? I can't remember.
PPE.
PPE, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, games.
But Geoff, on that,
yes.
the setup cost, just to be very clear, so we're talking probably in Australian dollars, $400 to $600 for a
Printer?
beginner medium-sized printer.
Yep.
Call it another $200 to $300 in alcohol washers,
Yep.
UV things. $60
stuff.
for a bottle of resin, PPEs. You're talking $1,000.
Yes.
Really?
Easily.
Yeah.
So resin, it there's a lot of setup for that, but it is way quicker for printing armies. And if you're someone who wants to own every single army, you'll probably make your money back. But, otherwise, it's a lot of hassle. It has to be printed in a well-ventilated area or outside.
Yeah, the smell on these ones is quite bad.
Yeah,
I don't have a filament one, but from memory, the smell was almost non-existent on those ones.
Zero.
Yeah.
So you could easily, for example, we'll go into this in a second, but a resin printer I would not have in my office. A filament one, you could genuinely have it in your office, just ticking away. And
as long as you don't mind the sound.
Yeah.
Resin printers are quiet. Filament printers less so.
Filament.
But that's the resin. So resin, and it is very brittle as well. But you're also normally doing much smaller pieces with it, so that does increase the brittleness.
Yeah.
And it needs supports for everything, so you'll have support holes and things like that. Which is
that's a good point, Geoff.
That a lot of people don't like.
That's almost a dark art in itself.
Yep.
Which is, people try to make it a science, but
it's just, it is what it is.
Yep.
You experiment with every model, and it's different for everyone half the time. So I've got guidelines for how I do each type of model, but it's it sometimes
more the
sometimes
better.
Doesn't. Yeah.
More the
You'll get
better.
a lot more failures on a resin as well.
Yeah, and the other one, and Alistair knows this quite intimately, is the dimples that it can leave.
Yeah.
If you just have the stock standard support settings on. For anyone who has no concept what we're talking about, when the model prints up, they print these supports.
Prints upside down.
Yeah, it prints upside down. It has support structures so that as the print builds, things don't quite literally fall off, or the weight shifts enough. So you have to have enough supports on it to make it happen. And
imagine if you've got wings sticking out.
Yeah.
You've got the body here, which is fine. It doesn't need supports because it supports itself. But then the wings on the side, it will start printing the bottom of the wing at the same time that there's a massive gap here. So
So for anyone who's actually viewing us on YouTube and not via one of the streaming or audio services. This is sort of, so again, it prints upside down like that, and then it requires the supports to ensure that structure is stable. So often what you end up with is on the underside of the model, as I've had to deal with, this is an old resin model, it's just for example, but on the underside, depending on what it looks like, it's as much work, and I did mention mold lines before and all of that fun stuff that comes from plastic press printing. It is as frustrating and neurotically exacerbating a process to go through as those are. So I don't think I've gotten to the point where I care enough to fill it in. But that said, as long as you're not looking at the undersides of the model, everything's fine.
As long as you're doing your proper, shading on your models, then that should be in shadow anyway.
just an extra thick layer of paint on that area.
But it's a good point in there. The experience does count with resin printing, because I don't know what was the Dark Elf models I printed for you.
The dragon, the chariots,
the actual infantry dudes. I think the execution.
Oh, the blackguard.
The blackguard. Yeah. So I printed them laying horizontal, effectively, right? And thinking, this is going to they're going to be really fast because I can increase the batches. But two things happened. One is there were so many dimples on the cloaks that it wasn't until I was handing them over I went,
it's really bad.
Probably wasn't
for
worth
the cloaks
time.
that managed
It's
to
important
actually
to note
survive.
that he did hand them over.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
With minor reluctance.
Yeah. So now we print them standing up. It takes a bit longer, but you eliminate the visible dimples.
And the hours that I've spent painting them don't matter. So you've told us a bit about resin, Geoff. Now tell us about filament.
Filament. So this is much better for those bigger models, as you can see in the picture, or you can't if you're listening on, Spotify. But anyway,
it's good for terrain.
It's good for terrain. Exactly.
It's the traditional 3D printer I think people think of. Like if you're a layman out there thinking about what a 3D printer looks like, this is what NASA has on the space station.
Yeah. So but it's also really good for bases and game aids. So rulers and things like that. Anything that lays flat and has a flat base is going to be amazing on this thing, because it's way more accurate in the way that it actually prints compared to resin. So resin has a tendency to warp sometimes, especially with flat things. So basing can come out a bit funky, and it will come out potentially not correctly measured, whereas FDM you're going to get exactly right every time. This is for terrain. So this is basically the way this one works is that you have a head at the top which has plastic that goes into it. It melts the plastic and it prints the lines on the bed at the bottom. It moves the head around to print the line. It's like what you would imagine if you're thinking of 3D printing. So what we always used to see when people were talking about their 3D printed houses and things like that. So it's always that layer by layer building it up, and it creates a plastic thing, non-toxic, very sturdy. Easy setup, and it's basically, if you get a Bamboo Labs, you literally take it out of the box, you pull off a few bits of plastic and tape, and you press go.
You're going.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that recommendation. By the way, we're not sponsored by Bamboo or by Elegoo
yet,
but these are just the ones that we have. But it quite literally is out of the box.
Yeah,
and go and that's another interesting point.
But that is a higher end, like more expensive.
Yes,
printer.
it is. But
the lower end ones, there's more setup. But
if you can leave with one, if anyone listening can leave with one thing, it's please God, get a self-leveling printer. If resin or FDM, whatever it is.
Yep.
Like with Geoff, Chris, and I probably come from a time where the original manual leveling resin printers,
piece of paper,
don't do it. Don't do it. Right? It's not worth your time. Make sure, even if it's a little bit extra,
FDM
make sure you get the auto level.
It is a giant pain in the ass having a manually leveled bed.
Yeah.
So you mentioned failures before.
Yes.
For the people out there who are sort of unsure what that means.
Wow, I mean, it's just a picture of
Where's
me.
the spectrum
Big
start?
failure. No. The failures are just, it's a print that comes out and it's not what you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
The thing is, resin printers, so as I'm saying, they warp sometimes. They don't get, sometimes they'll just
print?
miss, they just don't print. It just doesn't, it gets stuck on what they call the FEP, which is the layer of plastic at the bottom, and then just doesn't print. And then sometimes it just doesn't print the quality either, like with Alex's blackguard that he was printing. If you print it upside down, there's a good chance the face has just got to come out flat.
that has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, some of the demons I printed are missing feet, like entirely. Just
exactly. That. Yeah. And you'll get halfway through a print or something and it just won't be there. FDM has the same problem. FDM's lovely in that you'll get 23 hours through a 24-hour print and the top layer will die. If you don't have a higher end printer, then power outage, start again.
Done.
Now,
so it's
Alex,
still
Yeah, Alex, and Chris, you've both told me some rather spectacular stories about failing resin printers. If you had to choose the worst possible situation that has happened to you so far, and how maybe people could try and avoid it, what would that be?
Well, my one I can get into when we go to the next slide. So I'll let Alex go first.
My one, hands down, the worst was when I ignored the recommendation that you only use the FEP for a specific amount of prints. And in the older printers, of course, there was no way of tracking that. And what we mean by that is every time literally a layer gets printed, you're supposed to count that. Anyway, the very long story short is that I got a leakage in the FEP without knowing it. And so I kept printing. Resin was everywhere, basically. I went, there's something wrong with my print didn't print. So I'll do my normal thing and I'll take out the resin tank. And as I lifted the resin tank out, resin just exploded everywhere. And the reason why it hadn't been printing is because it had cured that resin on the actual LCD screen itself. So I had to go to YouTube, and thank God there was some guy in Malaysia that had a 50-cent hack to fix it. But it was the time when I went, oh gosh, I've got to actually start following the recommendations. And now the modern
instructions.
The modern printers now, like the Saturn IV Ultra, which I've got, now has a counter, and I actually will tell you, this print will actually exceed your FEP thing. Do you want to proceed or not? Yeah.
All right. What about yourself, Geoff?
The worst ones normally are you print a hollow piece, like a big hollow piece, like the body, like a torso of a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth or something. Actually, that's literally what happened to. Or my Iron Demon, and if you don't put a hole in it, then the resin doesn't come out.
Oh.
So if you then, or if it prints and the hole isn't there, like it prints without the hole, so like it accidentally just leaves the resin layer there, then you can kind of bring it inside. You're like, it's all fine, it's all cured, and then it'll leak all over your desk and whatever else. If you want a good story about a nice little leakage, then ask Alex from the 2 Plus podcast.
Amazing.
Oh no!
One of the Shaggoths I did for him. He painted it and everything, but it was left in his hot shed.
No. He'll listen to comment.
For listeners and potential shoppers on Geoff's store anymore, he doesn't. He's learned from that experience.
Very early on in my.
That's right. Very commercial.
Alex has received a discount ever since
on the site. Yeah.
All right. So, Chris, this is your printing setup.
Yes. So this is 4 printers in, probably 5 years of printing, and only 2 spectacular failures, or catastrophic failures, I should say. So, for context, I live in an apartment. I do own the apartment, so there's less, I guess, issues around, chemicals being spilt everywhere, because it's my own property and I'll just clean it up myself. However, if you can see in this photo, I've got it's called a grow tent. No, I'm not growing drugs. But you can get them off
police.
Yeah, listen. You can get them off eBay. They're not too expensive. That one was probably about $100. At the very top of the screen there's a carbon filter. So it can have a carbon filter added. That was probably another $100 or so. And then at the back there's a window, and I vent out obviously all the toxic fumes after they've been filtered by the carbon filter and then ejected outside. So the reason why I bought the grow tent, a couple of things. First of all, UV light is quite bad for the printers. That room is quite dark. That is the only window in there, and it's got like a filter on it anyway, so not a huge amount of light gets in, but it's still better to just have the printer with as little light on it as possible. The second thing is I have had catastrophic failures where resin has gone everywhere. I actually basically killed an entire printer because I had a FEP failure and all the resin went inside of the printer. And more importantly, went into the screw holes in the printer. So when I went to try and fix it, I actually couldn't get the screws out of the printer. So
yeah, throw it in the bin.
Yeah, that was basically a $400 printer just dead. So that grow tent will catch the resin if it leaks out, which is good. It encloses the toxic fumes, which is good. Keeps the printer protected, which is nice. To the right of that, and in that other photo there, is my kind of cleaning station. So you got to be careful with this stuff. So at the back there, I've got the wash and cure. So it's a 2-in-1 machine. And then I've effectively got 2 cleaning stations, 3 if you count the wash and cure. So print comes off the bed, immediately goes onto that tray there. Obviously, you can see I've got safety gloves. That little tub there is full of IPA. So I used to use water washable resin. I don't use it anymore. It's not really strong enough to deal with wargaming.
Yep.
I use ABS resin now, but it means I have to use IPA for cleaning. So that first tub is just the dirty resin water. Dirty IPA water. The print will go straight into that. Then I will try and remove the prints from the plate into that little container. Give them a little rinse, and then I dunk them into the container at the back, which is like a little pickle jar one. That is so I can lift it up and down. That's in much cleaner IPA. It's still IPA, but I clean that out a lot more. That's to try and get as much resin off as possible. And then finally at the very back there, it'll go into the wash and cure for the actual 5-minute wash.
Yep.
Yeah. Then the step that you can see there is, so I've washed those ones. Those ones are probably ready to cure now. So I would swap the wash and cure kind of components out to change it to a curing station. Put those models on, cure it for I usually do 20 minutes for mine just to make sure.
You do curing for 20 minutes?
I do, yes. Yeah, just to make sure that it's fully cured. There's really no harm. If you've washed all the resin off, there is no harm in doing a lot of curing. But yeah, if you cure it with kind of resin still on it, you will get kind of weird models because the resin will cure.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do about 3 minutes for small models, and then for larger ones, a lot longer. Yeah. Obviously.
Yeah, I've just always done 20.
Yeah, it can increase the brittleness of the models.
Yeah,
but it just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, so. Yeah. If you don't plan on throwing them at the floor, you're probably fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the big thing they'll highlight with these photos is it's in a self-contained room.
Yep.
This is in basically my washing room. So my washing machine and my dryer in there. I don't walk into that often.
Never do the washing.
Yeah, never do the washing. It's important to not have this set up somewhere that's high traffic in your house. If I had kids or a pet, it's also useful to have it in this room because you really want to be able to lock this away. You don't want kids or pets touching any of this stuff. It is a big safety risk. And as you can see in this photo, you need a lot of cleaning supplies. So that blue towel stuff at the back, which is just your kind of wet wipe kind of pick up all of the liquid stuff. You need tons of that. You need tons of gloves, lots of gloves. I've got the mask there, which I use obviously when I'm taking prints off. Yeah, you need, got to take this seriously. It's not, as Geoff said, it's not the worst thing in the world. I've touched resin. I've touched raw resin. I've spilt it on me. It does start to burn if you don't wash it off quick enough, but it's not going to kill you. But the good news, mess about with it.
The good news is the cancer is slow growing.
Yes.
So I think that's a really good point for us to move on to, I suppose, just some high level pros and cons. And I think we sort of talked, Alex, you mentioned really briefly about understanding whether or not 3D printing is for you as a consumer or as someone who plays wargaming or is looking for opportunities to have a bit more sort of control. Me, for example, I can't meet the conditions of keeping a printer secure and away. I have 2 small kids. I live in a rental property. I am very soon to be moving out of my rental property. There is no surefire way for me to be able to control the environment enough to be able to have a resin printer. An FDM printer, maybe at some point, just given the stability of it, but resin in particular. So if you find yourself like me, without that control over the environment that you can set it up in, Chris has pointed out already it needs to be a low traffic, self-contained environment away from direct sunlight and well ventilated. If you're like me, then it's probably not for you. Yeah, but in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly, I will say Alex put this slide together, and then I added some bits in brackets just based off, the experience of not having a 3D printer. And I'm not sure Alex has seen those yet. But Alex, given you did put this slide together, would you like to just quickly run us through your top pros, cons, and neutral points?
I think number one is the cheap models, right? And this is actually a misconception at times. So initially, this is the sequence of should you? I want a 3D printer. I go to, and this is why we're never going to be sponsored by GW, right? Is I go to GW's website and I go, oh, that terrain piece looks great, and I look at it, and it's $180 for one building. Now, Geoff,
forest.
What can I buy from your store for $180 terrain-wise comparative for one medium-sized building off the top of your head?
For $180, you can get a full set of 6 or 7 buildings.
Okay, so you get 6 or 7 buildings. Now, the question now becomes, if I'm an at-home user, do I just buy my entire table's worth of terrain from Geoff in one hit for $180, or do I buy 6 pieces from GW for $1,000, or do I pay $1,000 for a resin or FDM printer, right? Yeah. So immediately this comes down to the cost is probably the second factor. I like Alice said, probably am leaning towards. First factor should always be, if you've got kids and it's not a controllable environment, buy it from a provider like Geoff, right? It's not worth going down the track after that. But then you have to have a hard look at the models, because it only becomes cheap as you go, print a lot.
It's a scale. So
exactly.
For me, when I originally got into 3D printing like 5 years ago, because I'm a hobby fiend, I knew that I was never going to print just one army. It was never going to happen. And I play multiple different systems as well. So for me, I can sit there and go, the printer and setup is about $1,000. And then I would say, I guess context for the users or the viewers of this show, I would say a full old world army at 2,000 points is probably going to be like 2 bottles of resin, maybe 2.5. So it's probably like another, $100 in resin, maybe a bit more. So you're looking at, to print like a 2,000 point army, $100. Like it's not really, but that's kind of the ballpark that you're looking at. So you're like, okay, for me to actually make my money back on that printer, I kind of need to print the equivalent of like 4 armies really to kind of make it worthwhile, or a couple of armies at least. So if you're going into it and you know over the course of the lifetime of the printer that you are going to get the use out of it, do it. If you're only looking at printing a couple of things or one army, please just go to shops like Geoff's shop, hit up your mates or whatever. Like, there's no reason to get into this hobby, and it is a hobby in and of itself, if you're just going to print like one army, really.
Yeah. And the Geoff, did you want to say something on that?
No, well, I was just going to make the comment that my one army that I wanted for the resin printer for cost $2,500 for a 2K army.
Yeah.
So it was an easy financial solution, decision.
Yes, it's a good segue, Geoff, into the pro about the availability of models though is very high.
Yes.
And if you play a game like Old World, where quite literally some of the models have not been available or are still not available, if you play a Legacy faction, then you need to go in there. And I think Old World in general is probably the most accepting game system. And that's actually something we didn't touch on. If you are a tabletop gamer, you cannot actually just straight up assume that people are going to be okay with you bringing 3D prints. Like GW absolutely will never allow them in their stores. The Old World see it as outside of it, but yeah.
Yeah, a lot of your friendly local gaming stores also won't allow it just because they feel like they're stealing their
many of the retail ones certainly based on the relationships they have with Games Workshop, very likely to not allow 3D prints.
Yep. But again, the creative freedom is immense out there. So My Mini Factory is probably the most famous for STL designs. Those are basically the files that 3D sculptors put out to the market, and for, let's call it 10 to 20 Australian dollars, you can go and buy the design for a unit and print them. And away they go. And there's many different combinations. So even Alice's Empire Army, what theme was it? It was
like
Conquistador.
The most recent one that I have is sort of Spanish Inquisition themed, which is great. And then I've got so a couple of the because I've gone Grand Army and then I've gone Knightly Orders, for example, they're from two totally different designers. So my Grand Army is Spanish Inquisition themed, and my Knightly Orders are very specifically Knights of the White Wolf themed. And because you have the freedom to select from a provider or a range of providers and designers who are putting out such high quality sculpts that maybe not the easiest to print, as Alex will attest, but certainly most of them do their best to try and make it easy to print as well. I think the accessibility of those designs makes it so appealing and so attractive.
I think it's also worth really highlighting that this is kind of one of the most powerful things that kind of the internet gives us, in that if you think about it, someone can create an army of STLs right now in 2025, put it up online, and that could sit there for 20, 30 years, right? And that army is available forever, basically. So if you think about it, when I started printing 5 years ago, let's say I want to print Dark Elves. I think at the time I was looking at Dark Elves, and it was like, okay, there's like 2 big creators that do Dark Elves. And if they're not your vibe of those, like if the models and the styling is not your vibe, too bad, right? You fast forward 5 years, I reckon there's probably 6 or 7 Dark Elf armies out there now that are
if
not
the
more
same level, with individual designs.
And every year that goes on from now, you're going to get more and more options every single year. So it's kind of insane to think how far we've already come and how far we have to go.
Yeah, and we should say, I think the Squarebase survey, off the top of my head, said that like 5% of people had actually at-home printers, and maybe 15% use 3D models. So, GW and other providers like that are still clearly making retail sales out of this. So it's still a niche hobby, but you do. I for one have liked that journey of going into My Mini Factory, trying to find the vibe of the model that I like. You do have to be careful. You can't have, it needs to stay within the delta of it fits the model that it's supposed to represent in proxy wargaming, whatever system that you're using. But there's an important point here also about the designers. They run monthly Patreons. You can get a lot of sculpts. But Geoff, you have commercial licenses to some of the resin STL designers specifically. So if I was a person looking to get an army printed like Alice's Empire, I should contact you first to maybe get a list of those commercial licenses that you hold before I go exploring and look at those first.
Yes. Yeah, if you did want, someone like myself to print the army for you, I would recommend getting in contact with them first and seeing what they have. because it can be a bit of a journey to get those commercial licenses. And if you've got to get it for the entire range normally. So it's got to be something that's actually worth spending the money on. So they won't have everything. And it's just so many designers out there now. So you're like, yeah. But some of them are good. Some of them monthly Patreons that you pay. It's really quite cheap. But yeah.
For full access to content libraries and the continued designs that they have, I'd second that for sure.
Yes.
There are, I think I pay maybe $15 a month for access to 2 designers that I really appreciate. And in the time that I've been with them, they've released full ranges of models for maybe 5 armies, both of them. So that's 10 armies total after maybe sort of 10 months, 11 months, plus their back range, which sort of they make available depending on your subscription. So definitely go and check that out.
Yeah.
Now,
the other really good way is Kickstarters that a lot of them do
so good.
all the time. And they'll have a tier on there, which is you get access to everything that we've ever made.
So just before we move on from the pros, I guess the last real thing to hammer home is one of the most powerful aspects of 3D printing is you can print as many as you need. So if you've ever sat there like Alistair and gone, man, what does 30 Knights of the White Wolf look like on the table? Well, then you hit up Alex and you go, Alex, mate, I need 30 of these models tomorrow. In fact, you should be printing them right now. Why are you not printing them right now? And instead of, like, if you tried to do that with a regular GW game and you went out and 30 models, it's probably boxes of 5, right? So it's bloody expensive.
$80 minimum a box, if not close to $120.
It's expensive to try those things out. When you have a 3D printer, trying those things out is almost child's play because it's just really about how much resin have you got and how long do you have to print.
Now, there's an important follow-up for that as far as we believe, and I think it draws into maybe the neutrals here in terms of points, in that you will likely end up with that freedom, if you're not circumspect about how you use it, with an ever-growing pile of shame. I can happily say that the models that Alex has printed for me are, for the most part, printed and put together. Yeah, the one dragon. How many games?
Never. It's never been used.
Got paint on it.
I bet. Yeah, it looks great. Contrast.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But I think it's important to realize that there's probably a level of self-control to be exercised in the ownership of one of these.
Oh yeah,
three great big nods. So I suppose do bear that in mind. And from a hobby point of view, we've talked about this on the podcast before. Obviously, we don't endorse printing a big grey army and then showing up to events every time with a big grey army and never getting anywhere. I don't think you do yourself a service by doing that, and you certainly
may have
don't do the
spoken about that in the past.
We certainly have spoken about in the past. So be circumspect and be reasonable. And talking from experience, don't overextend yourself either, and suddenly look back and go, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have bought that file."
Definitely on that pile of shame point. I am a big proponent of the War Master game system. There is one particular creator who has done, in my opinion, the best War Master sculpts available, and this person is called Forest Dragon. Pretty famous in that kind of scene. I have been a patron of them for basically 5 years. They put out 2, maybe 3 armies a year, so I have all of the armies. I genuinely think that I've printed 4 full War Master armies, and I am only just starting to paint one of them. I have piles of War Master minis that I've printed sitting in the wardrobes behind me.
Shame.
For years, right?
Shame.
If you go down this path of 3D printing, it will happen. You will print more than what you need, but you do need to try and keep on top of it, because it's so easy to just hit print and go and have an idea in your head and just go, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to do that army, and then a month later, when you've printed all, several hundred models, suddenly go, oh, that's not a good idea. I probably shouldn't have done that.
I've felt the despair in your voice there, Geoff.
There's 100 hobgoblins sitting in a drawer.
That's been played.
Well,
Old Hammer.
well, hang on.
We'll see.
So I think at 50 flat minutes of us talking about 3D printing, I feel like we probably need to move on into our next topic. But are there any thoughts, I suppose, Geoff, as our guest specifically, as an expert, as a subject matter professional, are there any thoughts you want to leave the people at home about 3D printing before we move on?
Honestly, just reinforcing a lot of what we've said, to be like, which is, don't just go out and buy one thinking that you're going to make your money back, because there are a lot of printers sitting on Gumtree.
Geoff Sport
a lot
3.
of big setups. So yeah, I think about what you actually want to do with it. Otherwise, you're going to either have an entire house full of grey models, or you're going to end up getting rid of it pretty quickly. So
fabulous.
That's my final thought.
Wonderful. And with that, we can move on to talking about the Beastmen Arcane Journal. Okay. So, Alex, I think, deserves a little bit of credit here, as he's sitting there smugly, hands behind his head, for those of you who can't see him,
Power pose.
with an unsurprised, pleasant look on his face. He does deserve a bit of credit in sourcing the leaks that I think I certainly poo-pooed in our episode about them. The initial drop of what was coming, particularly the magic lore, appears to have been pretty much totally correct. And I think this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I feel like the Beastmen leaks, the Beastmen rules releases that we've seen in probably the last week, is that really the first leak that we've seen for the old world? Have there been other sort of big, the week before or a couple weeks before?
Yeah, I think what happened with that one, just because I feel like I've seen a little bit of context, was a couple of creatives have already confirmed this, but they were given this book a long time ago. And so I'm not going to say one of them leaked it, because you literally have no idea. Could be someone from the factory, like you just don't know. But because it's been around in those circles for so long, I think that's why you've seen such concrete leaks and so many leaks about it. Because the reality is, if you give someone a product and you say, don't talk about it until the release date. Oh, by the way, we've had to push the release date out 2 or 3 months further than what we thought. Stuff's going to get out. Like, it's too hard to hold secrets for that long.
It's an age-old tradition, Chris. The Nokia 3310. I've got it in my pocket, like I'm taking a potato. Like,
make sure you shake your hand while you take it.
Yeah, while you take it. That was in 1998 or 2000. We had that, and we still have the same quality today.
We literally poked fun at it last episode for anyone who might remember. Now, Alex, we're not spending more than 10 minutes on this, okay? You've got 2 slides. I'm timing you now.
We've cut it down to 2 slides.
We're not spending more than 10 minutes of this.
Yeah, and we'll probably preface that, again, like with the Wood Elves, we're not going to do a massive in-depth review. There's so many content creators out there that are doing it. You can have a look at.
Actually, just a little shout out on that. If you actually want to see the this journal being played, Mountain Miniatures is doing 2 battle reports. I think on his free side of the channel, one with each of the armies of renown from this book. So if you want to see the army in action, just go there.
All right.
Yep. Famously, I think Alex Brown from 2+ was going to be the first person globally to use Beastmen in a tournament yesterday, and then he ended up not being able to play. So he unfortunately missed out on that one. But look, I think the general feedback is that it's a pretty solid Arcane Journal all around, and what most people gravitate towards it seems to be on rating these things as the magic items, and whether they add new things. Are they overcosted? Are they not? Do they add a giant spawn of chaos? Is basically also one of the new benchmarks. And really what we've put here is, there are some great things in here. There are some exceptional magic items in this book that you're definitely going to see. I mean, going from top, Brass Cleaver for the audio listeners. No saves of any kind on a 6 to wound. It's still AP2 on its normal thing. So normally when you see like a killing blow or a decapitating
Like
strike
AP
or whatever
nothing.
it might be, it's AP nothing and you get that. This is still a strength user, but when you're on, a strength 5 beast lord, you're still fine. But no saves. So to be clear, no armor, no ward, no regen, no nothing. And so on a high attack Beastman, I think you're going to see this. And especially because we're not talking about magic items that are 60 points. I think that's 30 points.
Carry on.
Scimitar of Skulltar, 25 points. AP1, multiple wounds 2.
So good.
So good. Probably the biggest thing people are talking about is now the inclusion of the Chaos Armor to Beastmen characters. Full plate Chaos Armor and heavy Chaos Armor, which includes their ward save.
Big.
Now, I'm about to get mad as a Warriors of Chaos player because these are extremely common, and a Lord level character in Chaos to get full plate is literally the Chaos Lord. That's it. To get the 4+. A Beastman, like Wargore, can now get full plate with a 5+ ward included.
Sorry, I'm just going to touch on that point for 1 second. As a Chaos Dwarf player, and I'm sure Geoff will back me up on this, my rank and file troops, the models are literally covered in plate armor and do not get full plate. So you can stop talking.
Guys, I don't know what you're talking about. My greatswords are the most heavily armored, models in the game.
One
They've
cuirass.
got full cloth sleeves, a cuirass, and a felt hat, and they are
it's the
full plate armor.
Kevlar flannel shirts and stuff. It's the really over the top cuffs that really.
Yep.
Yeah. We can spend an hour on Geoff's painting technique for full plate armor.
All right.
Now
5 minutes. Come on.
Yeah. So this is the one we did actually cover this last time. Banner of the Warp Moon, no fly on a leadership test. So Falcon Horn.
So is that Falcon Horn equivalent? Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think the general commentary is that it's not as good on Beastmen because of lower leadership, because it's an unmodified test. So even though they have Warband, you can't be using that. So
is the BSB leadership any decent? Is it probably leadership 8?
It
right?
probably is, but most people are saying put it on a Bestigor unit because they can get veteran, which gives the reroll, and off that's a pretty decent chance. I think it becomes 80% or 85%.
Based on the Wood Elf Arcane Journal, this banner must cost 120 points. It's quite good.
Oh yeah. Beast Banner, Mini Swift Stride D3. Again, that's like 40 points or something that.
Does it add
adds charge range? Yep.
Yeah,
Still adds 3 inches charge range and gives you the extra D3 movement. The Demon Heart. This is what everyone's raving about, which is basically worded. I've put Mega Dispel, but in effect, it is. As long as you're attempting a wizardly dispel, you can attempt to dispel that spell as one wizard level higher than the wizard casting it. So even if you're level 1, trying to dispel level 4, you count as level 5.
That's pretty good.
However, the downside of that is if you're level 4 trying to dispel a level 1, you count as a level 2. So,
okay, interesting.
Yep. I think you're going to see that everywhere. Auto take across the board. Herdstone. Geoff, you've got to get a Herdstone in the store, mate. This is going to be number 1 seller.
Yep.
Do you have one?
I do need to sort that out. I actually don't, to be honest. I actually have the Herdstone itself. The GW model,
okay.
But,
sell that at a premium and then print a new one.
Just make sure that they're all on the 3-inch base, not this 6-inch dinner plate that we're going to see everywhere. Little 3-inch Herdstones, Geoff. Little 3-inch ones.
6-inch all the way. I want massive. Now, the Herdstone was actually bang on what we had in the preview in the video before.
Yeah.
Shockingly, 100 points, better special rules. I think Adam from Old World Charm said it has better special rules than entire Arcane journals do of Armies of Infamy combined.
I think what I like the most about it is it is a bit flexible. So there's a version. So you can kind of run it two ways, really. One is you sit it back in your deployment, and you run a very defensive Beastmen army. And I know that sounds a bit weird, but they can actually do it quite well. Because the big thing is, if you control it at the end of the game, it's 200 victory points, which is huge. Yep. But it also has a lot of nice buffs for you. You can also place it quite far out in front of you, and then full send your army. You still want to capture it at the end, but full sending your army, because you're going to get a lot of combat buffs from it as well. It's nice that it's kind of a little bit flexible like that, because it could have easily been kind of too far one way or the other, and then you just see, it's either always in their deployment or always up front. Yeah, it's good.
Yep. And my hot take is that Woadspan, which is the large blast template, gets put down, has a bunch of other effects, -2 ballistic skill, causing panic tests, etc. Is going to be one of the top spells in the game, not because of those effects, but because it doesn't move. It's a large, placeable template that doesn't move, that blocks line of sight, which you control when it ends. I mean, obviously they can try and dispel it, right? But that when we think about charge blocking dragons, for example, and the scene that we're in going into Old Hammer, where you're either having a dragon and no mage, you put that large template down in front of that dragon, it's not going anywhere. It cannot charge.
Crystal column with extras. Yep. It's very, very good. And it's a large blast template, not small.
It is large.
Okay, well that's you've got about 2 minutes left to take us. Oh, and Praeton, because I love the Praeton, and I'm glad to see it included as a profile. I have not looked at it. I have no idea what its stats are, but it'll be fabulous to have, as Chris put it, Orion's dog playing around on the board. I look forward to the 3D sculpts that people are going to bring to that. All right, Alex, the bad.
There's not much. It's literally, I think people are disappointed about Warp Gauze, mostly because they wanted Forsaken in Beastmen, which was never going to happen. Never going to happen, but their costs are pretty much the same. And the same thing, right? Like they roll into combat, they roll on the table to get a boon, and depending on what you roll is some buffs that you get. And it's the same thing, like Poison, extra toughness, AP2. If you remember, Chris, when I played your Ogres with Forsaken, and you said, there's no way that Alex is going to roll Killing Blow on his 3 Forsaken guys against my Bruiser.
First roll.
So that's probably the one thing. And the one that devastates me is Impetuous on the Minotaur Horde, which is just sad days.
I don't think it's as big a deal as people are making it out to be. Like Impetuous is pretty rough, right? Like it's the whole, if you can charge, you roll a d6. If you get one result, you have to charge.
4 up.
Yeah, if you get below that, then you don't have to charge. And it's basically just 50-50, and you don't get the benefits of Frenzy in terms of, getting the extra attack. That said, so Chris and I talked about this. I think the Arcane Journal for a lot of the army special rules is it's just they've been designed a while ago. Obviously, nothing about the design suggests that they're set up, or even the way that they've been given to people. As Chris pointed out, it's likely that these books were handed out to creators a significant period of time ago. So there's nothing about this that says it's being reactive to the way the game is being played. I think it's just there. It is what it is, and they've all been designed by someone who's like, yeah, I want this to feel a particular way. And Impetuous, slightly better than Frenzy in terms of flexibility for the army, but I don't think it's that big a deal when you've got that heavy chaos armor, when you've got motley crew floating around on the Minotaurs, when you've got lots of interesting rules and combos now with chaos. I think it's chaos gifts now being available. Is that right to Minotaur characters, when you've got a Minotaur who can be a level 2?
And that was probably one we missed out on. The good part is you can now have enchanting aura, or strike last Minotaurs.
I think Minotaurs will be just fine. I don't. Yeah,
but I'm devastated.
Are they going to end up? Are they going to end up on Tomb King tables being shot to death with everything else? Yeah, of course they are.
I hope so.
But
I think the point that I would make about that is because you can run Minotaurs as core in the Grand Army, I'm pretty sure. So to get this kind of special Minotaur army and for it to not quite hit is a little bit disappointing. I think if you couldn't run Minotaurs as core, it would be a lot better to run. Like a lot more interesting for it to exist. It is a bit of a miss, I think, on just the list building side, but it's still it's options, right? It's something new to try in the army, something to tweak how you play, which is good.
Well, I'm just going to say Alex has a 3D printer and a bunch of Minotaur sculpts, so I'm very much looking forward to Old Hammer being a feast of the Minotaurs, and that
there will be a
I
few
think,
of us, I'm sure.
yeah, definitely, and that I think is where we'll leave that. So we've spoken now about 3D printing. We've spoken about the Arcane Journal. Now we're going to talk about the thing I want to talk about. We're going to talk about the Old World Behemoths' very first event. Now, we've mentioned a couple of times, a long time ago, we used to run events. We ran Warhammer Fantasy, we ran Lord of the Rings, we ran X-Wing, and we ran 40k. It's been a long time for us since those days, but what we've done, having made some inflammatory comments perhaps on our last podcast episode, is decided to put our money where our mouth is. And what we've been looking for a long time, probably since the scene has started up again, is doubles. And so we sat down and thought, well, maybe it's time for us to be able to put an event together. So we've picked a venue. For those of you in Sydney who are interested, we will stick the BCP page in the show notes as well to come check it out. We are capping this event at 16 teams, that is 32 players, but it's simple in its intent, but we're making it a little bit more exciting and a little bit more interesting by actually making this a bit of a narrative focused event. We talked a couple of weeks ago on our previous podcast around the differences between competitive events that are structured in a way to encourage best generalship, the understanding that everybody wants to win, and there's some tactical elements to this. In approaching our event, we certainly came from the approach of, well, let's celebrate the interesting things, the different things that the old world brings us, the moments that happen in the games, and let's look for ways to encourage that, bring newer players along, help build that excitement that I think we all used to feel looking through books, looking through the old army books, looking at lore, looking at pictures, understanding what the units meant, and maybe tickling a few nostalgia bones as we go. So just to talk a little bit about that, the missions are structured over the course of the day to be consecutive in their results. So at the beginning of the day, everyone will get a little bit of a briefing around what the scenario is, what they're fighting for, and each of the rounds sort of follows a little bit of storytelling over the course of the day. They are custom missions that we have put together. They are all objective based. So round 1 and round 2 are purely objective based with special conditions set around them. You can find that in the players pack. Round 3, mission 3, is a victory points win mission. However, there are still objective and progressive scoring. So we're trying a couple of things that maybe haven't been done so much in the old world, as well as far as objective missions go. It's not going to be the most scientific about who's going to win, clear cut, yes or no. It may skew in a couple of directions, but we've kept it down at 750 points per player for that reason specifically. And again, the intent behind us having this is that we want to make this a lot about the story and a lot about the sorts of games and moments that you have in games, forgive me, that keep this interesting, and they're the things that you remember. So on that, we are asking all players to put together a little bit of a narrative with their partner around what their alliance looks like. We're not putting any limitations on who can ally with whom. We do have an allies matrix to see how you might treat one another, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you want to ally Warriors of Chaos with Empire, you absolutely can. But we are asking that you give us a plausible explanation as to why that might happen. And this is as much for you as a player, if you come and join our event, as it is for us. We're interested in knowing how you think this sort of alliance can come up. We're interested in sort of understanding who your characters are and what they can do. We've given you some examples of these sort of unconventional relationships as well in the Players Pack. But really excited to see what people come up with here. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was almost inevitable that we were going to run an event like this. And to preface it, there's plenty of places to go to get that competitive, I want to play a tournament fix. I could be wrong, right? But I haven't seen doubles yet in New South Wales. It has been. Perth have run a few. I believe even Melbourne may have run one. I've not yet seen it in Sydney. So I think that was actually our first port of call. Was we've been joking to the Old Hammer guys, doubles, and we thought, well, we'll just do it ourselves. And secondly, the narrative focus is about calling this a narrative event rather than a tournament.
Mm.
You're going to go into this, but lots of people I've been talking to around, hey, would you attend a narrative event? Doubles. Absolutely, we would. We would love to attend. It's a great opportunity for people who may not know the rules as well as they would like to come and play games, because there's 4 people at the table. So it's a lot less of a
you versus me
game,
and
you versus me. 2 of you might be off getting drinks, someone's taking photos. There's lots of great moments happening. I've always loved doubles tournaments. When I was paired with Chris and Tom, and hated the other ones on there. But some of my best memories were doubles events, and I think actually, Elsa, you and I once won Best Painted at a Parramatta doubles event because we were quite literally the only people
with a fully painted army. Yeah, that is correct.
Fully painted army.
That is
so
correct.
I think this is great. I think asking people to submit 200 words is not a big ask.
100 words each.
100 words each. God forbid you could just use ChatGPT.
I was literally
to do it.
literally about to say, if you are not a writer, if you are uncomfortable putting prose together or constructing something, there is nothing stopping you going and putting a prompt into ChatGPT.
Gemini.
If you have the ideas, if you have the thought around why your armies have come together, throw in a couple of names, give it a prompt just to give you a reason for being there together, go ahead and do that. That's absolutely fine. What we want is for you to build that investment in your armies, though. And lots of people who have had armies for a long time will already have this. You'll have the thought around, oh, that model has done X, Y, and Z in the past, and that means something to me because that model has done this. And that's the sort of thing we're trying to tap into here. So bring out the models that might not be super meta, but they have the nostalgia associated with them. They've done great things for you in the past. And I suppose that's a decent chance for us to move on. We've put together, it might look a little daunting at first, but the reason that we've put this together is because we actually have 5 awards for the day, and only one of those is around battle points. So we do have a sort of Tactician's Award, a Tactician's Glory Award, which is specifically about your results, win, draw, loss, plus the secondary objectives within your games. But beyond that, what we've given you are story points, teamwork points, sportsmanship points, which we're reintroducing back into a player's pack from when we used to do them, and theme. And the story points and teamwork points, teamwork is a little bit easier for you to access and coordinate, but the story points are designed to give you a little bit of an element of randomness about the sorts of interesting things that can happen in the game. So there's one in there around a character fights and defeats an enemy character in a duel, a unit champion defeats an enemy character in a duel, a unit holds on double ones, all those sorts of things where when it happens, I probably should have put in there, you roll 5 dice at a unit that you should have killed and you roll all ones, because that happened to me versus Dave 2 weeks ago.
Happened to me versus Paul.
Yeah, but those sorts of things that, have you standing and shouting and cheering, those are the sorts of things that the story points are trying to account for. You're not going to get all 5 of them every game. It's not going to happen. But we wanted to introduce that as something that takes a little bit of engineering for you to create the opportunity for you to get there, and then rewards you for taking risks. The teamwork are more around coordination, working together, making sure that you're playing together, not just playing your own game on a board with 3 other players. And sportsmanship, we're quite specific in this. Sportsmanship we've brought along from the good old days, or the bad old days, when we used to include it as a full heavy scoring system in our packs. But what we're trying to again encourage you to do here is to look at this from a really casual standpoint. We've talked a lot about competitive versus casual. We've talked a lot about, whack personalities and the sorts of things that we've seen in games that maybe aren't really that great. And we're not trying to weaponize good behavior, but what we are trying to do is give you a little bit of guidance around, well, what does being a good sport look like? And if you're sort of unfamiliar with that, that's totally fine. But make sure that you have a bit of a look, because you will be scoring each team playing against you as you sort of go through on sportsmanship points. And there is an award associated with that as well.
And we should say it's a checklist.
It's not
a subjective scale, which is like, oh my gosh, Geoff's double iron demons just like absolutely railroaded my skin wolves, and therefore he's going to get a 1 out of 5.
Talking from experience, yeah.
Talking from, well, he killed my giant spawn. I haven't forgotten that with this bloody thing. And so yeah, it removes the subjectivity, but also is very clear on it. Having intent, being polite, being respectful, etc., allowing reasonable takebacks, being clear on measurements, etc. So you could go through and quickly say what's happening.
Definitely. And by the way, we're not leaving this up to players. One of the things that I've already had a conversation with a couple of people around is, well, what's the TO support? You're asking a lot of players, particularly if you're saying, we want this to be for new players. You're asking a lot of them by putting these sorts of things in and including them. And one of the things that I do want to say, so myself and Alex are extremely likely not playing in this tournament, simply because we want to make sure that it is run, engineered, and provided a really supportive environment for players coming along, so that they can feel, oh, I'm not going to get confused, or I'm not going to look at this. There'll be scoring sheets for every round that provides the little bit of checklist or things to look out for. There'll be full guidance on how the missions are set up, on how the boards will be put together, I should say, for you. It's not like we're leaving everyone out in the cold with this. We fully intend to approach this from a support environment that reflects what we're really trying to achieve. And one last thing to point out in terms of scoring, you can get as many points as a full win from just your theme. If you have a fully painted army, if you maybe do a bit of tweaks to what you have to help match your partner, if your narrative submission is of an interesting quality and it includes some bits, if you decide to bring props or mascots or costumes, God forbid. But if you decide to do any of those things, there is a reward there, because that again is what we're really leaning into here with having a narrative event, with having something that wants to encourage you to think about all of those weird and wonderful characters that are built into this universe, and the ways that you can sort of bring them to life.
Now, Geoff, you run AOS events. Am I correct?
Yes.
In saying that?
Yep.
Now, we're completely out of touch with that scene.
Yep.
Do they run hard battle points? Do you have theme in those game systems, or is that something special to Old World?
Well, Games Workshop develops General's handbooks for Age of Sigmar, so it has all the pre-built scenarios and scoring and all that kind of stuff. So most tournaments you'll find use that, but there's also they have narrative style campaigns as well that you can do, and you can make up your own. But yeah, there's a lot of support, a lot more support for what what you're trying to do in AOS than there is in Old World. There's not really many scenarios or anything in Old World compared to Age of Sigmar.
As in, it's quite literally like a missions handbook. Maybe
Yep.
I'm just so under the rock that
Yeah,
says
yeah,
if
yep.
you want to play theme. Okay, all right.
So you get,
Yeah.
it comes out every 12 months and
Yeah.
you get new missions.
Some
everything.
events that I've attended, the theme points, I guess, would be rolled into like your paint score.
Yeah.
So some events they'll go, do you have any freehand? Is everything kind of the same set of colors? Is everything based the same? Display boards.
Like
Some of them go a bit harder than others, but generally it's kind of points to the side. It does affect your overall placing, but it's designed to be like to get. I think it's usually like out of 25, but it only really cares about 20 points usually.
Yeah.
To get 20 points is usually not that hard to get. And then if you kind of want to place really highly for painting, you want to aim for like 25.
And what was I going to say? Oh, but they do fun things like the theme points where you've got, sometimes they'll have bingo. So it's like, miscast and kill your own guy or that sort of thing. So yeah,
there's usually random prizes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, random prizes and things that you can get from that. So they do try to bring the fun into it, but you don't get a lot of flexibility in the missions and stuff themselves.
Yep. Now, theme can be interpreted in different ways, right? Because there's the lore fanatics, and theme to them might be quite literally the way an army is constructed and what you bring in that force, versus a hobbyist painter where the theme might be, I want to bring a display board with great models that vibe together, and I put all my effort into that. Are these theme points, Alistair, do they have, again, this spectrum? Should players come up with an explanatory note on it, or how do I get that 10?
Yeah, it's a great question. I suppose looking specifically to get the most out of it, what we are asking for is for the investment that you've made to be sort of quite clear. So if that does mean that you are a person who is much more invested in the hobby design, construction and painting element of it, and you've got it presented on a storyboard, on a presentation board, it's absolutely something that we'll take into consideration. It's not difficult then to tie that into what we've asked for from a narrative element either, to sort of introduce that or talk about that there. Unfortunately, it's probably the most subjective element of the day, but we're going to be spending a lot of time both before and during the event talking to teams around the sorts of armies that they've brought, talking to them about the characters they created, talking to them about the way that they've presented their armies and the painting and the custom models that they put together or the prints that they've singled out. It's a combination of everything. And frankly, I think a lot of people will probably end up with decent theme because of the way that they already invest in their armies, and it will probably only be the sort of super outstandings that end up on the high scale. It is just the most subjective, but talk to us, have a conversation with us. It's part of what we want. We want you sharing not only what you've done with us, but with the community at large. Don't feel shy about talking to others about your list, about what it's there for. By the end of the day, you should be aiming for, your opponents to be walking away knowing the name of your general, knowing the armies that they fought along the way to get to where they end up at the end of the day. It's absolutely what we want.
Now, the only point that's missing on here is when the orc players scream "Wah." Is that like plus 10 points, or
there may be
plus 20? What's that?
There may be minuses based on decibel level and body hygiene, but look, if that's your thing, feel free to do it within reasonable limits. Please don't be that person that we all have seen at a tournament who screams it till he's red in the face at his opponent, not at the sky, not at the board, not at his general, at his opponent. We've seen it before. That's not what we want. Please be reasonable. And that ties into sportsmanship. And I threw this in here just because I also wanted to make sure that we were putting our money where our mouth was when we talked about sportsmanship. Yeah, so I suppose that's a nice segue into us talking about sportsmanship. And we wanted
by the way, thanks to Geoff for coming. He's had to step away.
He has. Thank you, Geoff. Yeah, we wanted to talk to sportsmanship because, again, in the spirit of putting our money where our mouth is, we talked about this last time, and we talked about it being beholden on tournament organizers to reinforce a code of conduct, a set of behaviors, a set of values in their players. And what we've done is we've been quite explicit in giving you an example of what that can look like. Now, I don't think there's anything on this that the majority of people would not look at and go, yeah, okay, I do that with everything. But what we're also trying to do is encourage some of the things that we've found incredibly helpful for having games where tension gets ratcheted down as opposed to ratcheted up through play behaviors. And also just to generally set an expectation of this is how we want you to feel engaged. And this is how we want you to walk away from the table going, I might not have had a great time in the play state, but I'm confident that my opponent was friendly, that they spoke to me about everything that they were planning to do, that they were open and clear about what they were talking about. And when I made mistakes because I was excited or nervous, or I just plain forgot about something, they were willing to at least have a conversation with me about that. If not, allow me to sort of take back whatever I need to take back or correct what I need to correct. Now, we've included that in terms of reasonable because we're not expecting everyone to get 3 phases in and then have someone go, oh, I really shouldn't have charged that unit. Can I go back and take that back? That's not what this is for. That is not reasonable.
That's not reasonable. Yeah.
What we're thinking about is you hit combat. And we talked about this ad nauseum in our last episode. You hit combat, and the spell that you've been casting consistently every single turn on that one unit, you forgot this turn to put it off. That in no way, shape, or form impacts the previous versions of the play of the game state, and is absolutely something that we sort of expect you to go, oh, actually, yeah, you would have cast that. So go right ahead and cast it. Now, there'll be levels of reasonableness. We're hoping that everyone who's coming to the tournament is casual enough to go, yeah, no, that's okay. That's a mistake. You've done this. You've done that. That's fine. If it comes to the point that we need to talk about it or intervene on it as TOs, I suppose we'll have the conversation then. But what...
Yeah. Keep going.
What we're meaning specifically by that last point is that you're allowing people to be human beings. This event in particular, we've been really careful about calling it an event as opposed to a tournament. This event, despite the fact that we've called ourselves TOs and we've I think that's just a term that everyone's comfortable with when it comes to the rules arbitrators for events.
Just a power trip, that's all it is.
This is correct. You know, if it comes to the point that, you know, you really get heavily invested in the competitiveness of it, that's totally fine. But recognize that everyone around the table is a human being. And again, 4 heads around a table is probably going to be better at ensuring that everyone is keeping on top of things, ensuring that everyone is having good conversations, is being clear in their intent. It's part of the reason why we've gone for doubles initially to set this expectation as well, as Alex mentioned before. But all this page is asking you for is just to come, give it your best, be a friendly social person if you can. If you can't, don't make the day deliberately unpleasant for anyone you're playing with. I think that's
I
a
can
reasonable
summarize
answer.
it in a very Australian way.
Please.
And this page just says, "Don't be a dickhead."
I should have
effectively what it says.
I should have acronymed it to be "Don't be a dickhead." Definitely.
I think I'd like to just touch on with doubles, because I have played some doubles events in other systems before, particularly with the allowing people to do takebacks or be reasonable in being flexible. I have played a doubles event where my partner got very, very excited about his own army.
Mm.
And I'm in the middle of my movement phase, and he's already trying to do charges.
Or trying to play combats.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
So this game system wasn't structured the same way as Old World, but it was basically once you did your movement, then you went into charges. And I'm halfway through my movement phase, he's already charging. And it's like, okay, well, obviously 4 people around the table. He's not trying to cheat or mistime things. He's just too excited. So that kind of stuff will happen, especially in the first game as you're getting used to your partner. But yeah, it's being reasonable is really all that we want out of people.
Definitely.
Yeah, and and the be considerate as well is not just you've forgotten something. Sometimes as a player, you can go, you know what? Actually, I did forget it. That's all right. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to go back. I'm not going to do it because maybe it does flow the other way, where it actually happened to me yesterday where I was playing Cameron and he reminded me to cast Soul Eater on his dragon, right? The worst spell, assailant spell in the game. Would you believe, not only did it go off, I rolled a 6 to wound and he failed his ward save. I don't even come if he gets saves. And he took 3 wounds, right? And so I said, oh gosh, we can take that back. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone was expecting that to actually go. And he said, no, that's fine. And I said, I feel bad because you're the one that reminded me. And we had a conversation, a very good conversation about it. But it often goes both ways as well, right? So you're not expected to give everything back and be sitting there coaching your opponent into a win, or very gentlemanly like Cameron giving me an attempt at a spell which ended up in the worst case for him.
So I suppose I'm gonna echo just something Tom said that I really vibed with when we were talking about this last, in that, and I've put it at the top here, it is everyone's responsibility to maintain the integrity of the game state. So what I actually think what Cameron did was entirely along that line of reasoning. It's up to
for sure.
It's up to everyone.
For sure.
Now, do you have to again, everyone should know their own armies, but this is not a hyper competitive event. So if someone forgets, remind them. Please, that's what this event is for. We're as much open to all the different varieties of player and of experience level and of understanding of the rules as we can possibly be. We're not trying to put heavy pressure on everybody. Be open. If you're happy to share a little bit of wisdom based on your experience, go right ahead and do that. We want every table to, again, ultimately end up being a positive experience for everybody there. That means winning with grace, and it means losing with grace. So don't bear that in mind if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to come into this thinking I'm going to win, and all of these are limitations on me as a winner. They are as much guidance for anyone who's not having such a great day from a victory standpoint as they are for anyone who is. So anyway, let's move on from that. You can take a look at that at your leisure. It is in the players pack on a page all its own. Yeah. We will put the link to the BCP page, as I mentioned before. I suppose the last thing to talk about is the allies matrix. So there is no current allies matrix that exists for the old world, despite there being rules for allied contingents. And we are using the rules for allies contingents to understand how armies will interact with one another. We're using them raw. We haven't updated them. The only difference is that you are 2 armies side by side, as opposed to, one of the armies being 25% of a bigger army. But ultimately, the trusted, uneasy, and suspicious categories of allies are all supposed to function together. What we've done is we've leveraged the old 8th ed book, which had a matrix, and then tried to apply a little bit of thinking around what the narrative environment of the old world looks like, and the way that some factions are interacting with each other. I'm not going to say it's perfect. There are things that even I look at, having sent the pack around, and I go, maybe we should have changed that. But at the same time, if you have feedback about this, maybe drop it in the comments. But if you have feedback around what this looks like for your army, please let us know. I will just point out, for anyone who's going to immediately jump on and say, my army can only trust an ally with itself, that is always been the case in all of the matrices that have been released. There are many of them who don't ally with anyone. The 40k matrix is exactly the same. There are many armies that only trust their ally with themselves. It's not new. I think at least every army can have an uneasy ally with at least one other faction.
Doesn't trust Dark Elves and Skaven. And the answer is not even Dark Elves and Skaven trust each other.
Yeah, that's right.
Consider yourselves lucky that it's in there. No. But we will probably look to evolve this if we sustain this for future events, which I hope we do. We'll probably look to evolve it along with the Arcane journals and the stories as they come up. But if you have some thoughts, drop them in the comments, because we'll probably continue to evolve it over time.
I think it's also worth really calling out that we might be starting from, I guess, a conservative standpoint, and a lot of that is we don't really know all of the combos that you could pull off. Like a pretty good example is if you got a low leadership army and you suddenly gave them trusted with a high leadership army, well, suddenly that high leadership army is going to roll around with the general leadership 10 or whatever, and suddenly the low leadership army is going, this is the best thing ever.
I'm not even sure whether inspiring presence under trusted actually applies.
Oh, maybe it doesn't. I'd have to check.
I don't think even to trusted allies. I don't think it does. So,
but either way,
there are
combos. Yeah. Combos. Like, let's be honest. No one really runs allies in Old World.
No,
no. I mean,
nearly every event has banned it.
Yes.
Yeah,
and it's probably for good reason, because this is narrative. Because this is a lot more about the narrative side of things, and not let's just find that whatever power combos there are. It's better to kind of start off at this level, I think.
I think so. And that was certainly our intent. And talking about narrative, if you've made it to this far and you're still listening, I'm not going to go into the narrative of the day outside of the sort of mission fluff teasers that you've already seen. I think that's better served for the day. If you're coming along to that event, absolutely expect, when you're looking at player briefings, to get story, to get fluff, to have the missions that you complete and the way you complete them to actually impact what that looks like as well. We really plan on doing as much as we can to help you guys feel that your games, the stories that you're putting together, actually has an impact on what the end state of the day looks like.
Yeah.
Alistair promised to dress up, to do mood lighting, and to really set the scene.
It's going to be more than that. It's going to be more than that. For those of the people that don't know Alistair, he is a long-time game master for D&D. So expect some flair.
My moustache will be extra waxed.
Now, I just want to go back quickly. Yeah. Chris actually did raise a very good point about inspiring presence, which we did not pick up on. Now, in the construct of the allies mechanism as it currently is, when you go to uneasy and suspicious, they have the levies rule. Models for the special rule cannot use inspiring presence. Rules of the army's general, right? Now, I think Chris touched on a good point. If you're trusted, it could be interpreted as, because I don't have levies, I can use that. But I think we're going to probably say that the intention is inspiring presence is for your general still.
I'm gonna circumvent you slightly. So sure. there is a special section on page 280 of the rulebook called Allied Contingent Special Rules.
Yep.
And it says the following special rules apply to an allied contingent. Units belong It's basically you can't join independent, like your characters can't join your friends' units, your friends' characters can't join yours. But it does say units belonging to an allied contingent cannot use the inspiring presence rule of the main army's general, so that would be your allies' general, nor the hold your ground rule of a battle standard. So there are the controls built in. And again, we're not changing the way that allied contingents work.
Yeah.
We are leaving them very much as they exist within the rulebook for this event. We may change it into the future depending on what we see. But the rules are there in the rulebook. If you're coming along, please familiarize yourself with
That's good. We should link that page 280. But the point is, I think also is most doubles events just go, just the flat. If in a competitive landscape, the Allies Matrix is a disaster because it's severely changed things. But in a narrative setting, you're not going to be doing trusted battle brothers between Skaven and High Elves. We may even, I don't know, it might even evolve to having a hated category.
We may see.
Who came up with that idea?
I mean, who knows? There's one army with hatred already built
Right.
in, so I'm not sure whether we want to extend that to everyone else. But anyway, let's move on. I think we've talked about this enough. Thank you for listening. If you've sort of made it to the end of our event, again, if you'd like to know more about this, we will put the BCP link in the notes description. If you're in Sydney, the event is on the 27th of July at Exiles Gaming Club in Marrickville. We do have spots still available for the event. We did only launch it this morning. That said, they are filling very quickly. So if you are in Sydney, if you'd like to secure yourself a spot, we are doing pay on the day. So we're not expecting deposits. However, please don't sign up without the intention of actually showing up, because we will talk to people about what that means for future events that we will run. We are not afraid, unlike I suppose the majority of the events, of ensuring that people understand when behavior is not appropriate and what that means to them being invited to future events. Like I said, we ran events for a very long time and we're all grown up big boys. And so we're not necessarily afraid of having those conversations if they need to happen. We want to ensure the best possible experience for the biggest amount of people. So anyway, click on the BCP link, check it out. If you're in Sydney on the 27th of July, we'd love to see you at Exiles Gaming. Big shout out to Exiles Gaming as well. They're a fabulous event. We may do 1 or 2 practice rounds ahead of the 27th of July if we can swing the time away from our families and work, but we'll see. Keep an eye out. We'll post those around if we can. Okay, I think we're on to hobby. So Alex.
Yep. It's coming together. The demons are progressing. So not only did I manage to build and paint the demons to a sufficient standard, I managed to play with them yesterday. So you can see on the left-hand side, I've got one of my Exalted Flamers. And again, coming back to great roundabout conversation on the 3D printing community, is finding a Flamer model can be an interesting adventure because it's not something that a lot of designers have gone into. So you do have to think a bit out there on that. Thankfully, I found these sculpts, which are quite literally like mini Lords of Change. So I have used them as my Exalted Flamers. Checking with the TOs to get clearance for that has been okay for that. But the theme's coming well. I think you can see the Fat Man himself on a hill against a Chaos Dragon there. And
I love the dice tray holding him up.
Yeah, that's yeah. That quite literally was like, he's too fat to sit on the hill because he slides down it. In fact, he was pushing Cameron's dragon off the hill because he's that heavy. so it did do that. So again, another 3D printing thing right there is, you know me. I went, I don't think this model's big enough, so I'm just going to upscale it to at least be 5% bigger than Alice's dragon, and then hit print.
Totally necessary.
Yep.
Totally necessary. And there's still not enough pink fleshy goo on that Great Unclean one. But that's
But the Great Unclean one's a finished model, whereas the Flamer still has work to do. So heading up into Old Hammer, I want to now everything's at a base level, like, battle standard, washed, etc. Now start highlighting up, etc.
Keep an eye out for some more pictures around those. Maybe another hobby video, Alex, in the interim. Okay, Chris, I don't think we have any hobby from you this week.
No, I've been doing some painting, but just no real update.
And certainly no old world painting.
Of course not. Why would I do that?
Fabulous. All right. And in case you didn't realize, yes, my hobby has been nearly entirely driven by the Players Pack for the narrative event and getting that organized. So, excited to see where that takes us. I think that's about it. Did you have any comment, Alex, there?
Yep. So just a couple of things here. So we obviously lost Geoff due to some technical things, but shout out to him, pandemwargaming.com.au. We'll put the link in the chat. Geoff has actually very generously generated a discount code for the Behemoth listeners, albeit about 3 people in Australia can use it. Behemoth 10, which we'll put in the link as well. So please go check out his store. Again, I want to stress this point. for the amount of money that you can spend on one terrain piece, you can probably get a lot more from Geoff as a business, a small business within Australia. And it will come high quality, sometimes hand delivered if you're in Sydney at coming to these events, versus what you can get out there. So
gives back to the community as well. Like he helped run the TriCon event. I'm sure he's going to help run some old world events as well.
We may even see some of
renowned
his
Chaos Dwarf player with Double Iron Demon.
We may even see some of his work at Legacies of War. So we'll see how we go. But that is it. An hour 45, probably minus a couple of minutes for editing. But thank you so much for listening. If you've made it this far, it has been our absolute pleasure. As always, we'll see you probably in a week or two. Once we've had the chance to recap around Beastmen a little more, work on our event and sort of give you a bit of an update on what's happening there. But otherwise, on behalf of all of the Old World Behemoths, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to become a Patreon, make sure you check out that link in the description to help us keep the lights on. Otherwise, thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you to 25 Creative. Thank you to Geoff for coming along this evening to help us talk about 3D printing. And thank you to you for listening and following us along. We will catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.